classroom, we may reach 30 people at a time. In a semester, maybe we reach 120 people. And Ava is bringing the conversation together in such a way that we can reach double or triple that number of people in one screening, or an untold number of people who will see it on Netflix over this weekend or in weeks to come. And so I'm really happy that this is kind of where we are, that we're discussing, what we have, how we have allowed ourselves to become the most incarcerated industrial country in the world. And to call ourselves a democracy simultaneously, I think that is very difficult to be both of those things. And so when Ava, she called me up and said that she was interested in doing this, and so I've known her for a long time. Actually, before she was directing films, we had completely different other professional connection before that. And so when she mentioned that she wanted to do this, I was on board immediately. And also Khalil Muhammad, who you see in the film, he and I are classmates from graduate school. And he has been working literally from the first day in graduate school. He said, I want to study incarceration and criminalization in the African American community. And so he's been working on this for such a really long time. And so it was really important, I think, that I was able to have this conversation with people who care about this issue and who have cared about this issue for so long.
And then I wonder if you could also just talk about just the medium of film, of doing this as a film as opposed to, you're a writer, you're someone who treats these issues in writing a lot. But can you talk a little bit about, I don't know what the process was. Was it just an interview that you did with, the interviews that you did with her, were you talking about researching imagery as well for this?
So we got into a conversation about, interestingly enough, Khalil and I came in on the same day, just randomly, and so we were kind of sitting there talking about some of the things, so that maybe some of that historical spine came through in that. But also, we got into a pretty substantial conversation about Birth of a Nation. And if I recall correctly, that interview was in calendar year 2015. And that was the centennial anniversary of the film, Birth of a Nation. And so that was on the front of my mind, and we've gotten to that conversation about how D.W. Griffith was really, he was lots of things. People talk about the film for the racism, and for the valorization of the Klan and all these other kinds of things. That doesn't bother me nearly as much as the fact that D.W. Griffith was basically right. So in the film, he says that white Southerners and white Northerners can reconcile themselves after the lingering resentments and animosities of the Civil War. And the path of our reconciliation will be our shared contempt for Negroes. And that is how the ensuing history of the 20th century played out, which I found much more disturbing than the kind of over-the-top racism and the imagery in the film. It's what comes after it. And so I think that was part of what I had been thinking about at that point in time too, and so we got into that conversation.
I think the other thing you bring up that I had never heard before too was that the burning cross was something that he invented.
Yeah. So Griffith was a kind of fascinating figure. So he did Birth of a Nation, and most people don't know that the first anti-terrorism law in American history was the Klan Control Act of 1871, and so the belief was that the Klan had arisen. People didn't have the language of terrorism, but it had arisen to do the things that meet the definition, the textbook definition of what we call terrorism now, as an extra-legal entity trying to enforce kind of ideological or political pursuit through the use of violence and intimidation. And so the Klan Control Act was amazingly effective at rooting the organization out, and by the end of the 19th century, it was almost non-existent. And D.W. Griffith's film prompted a rebirth of that organization. And as a matter of fact, the Klan used Birth of a Nation as a recruitment tool for decades after that. And so there was a one-to-one relationship between that film and the actual loss of life of Black people. And the interesting thing about Griffith is also kind of prefaces the way we handle race, that we discuss race or interact with race now, is that he did a film after that called Intolerance. and it's been misunderstood. People thought that he did intolerance as a means of trying to rectify or make recompense for what he had done, for the evil he had unleashed with Birth of a Nation. But it actually wasn't. It actually wasn't. He was doubling down on this because the intolerance is not talking about racial intolerance. He is accusing W.E.B. Du Bois and the NAACP of being intolerant of his right to free speech. And so it's like, no, the problem is not that I have unleashed this racial terrorism on you and yours, is that you don't respect my right to say and do these sorts of things that have these direct consequences for you. And so that is really pretty much how we handle race now. If you bring up race or racism, the first thing someone says is, oh, you're the real racist. You're like, but I have this statistical data about black people being arrested for things that white people are not arrested for. Like, you're a real racist, you're dividing us by mentioning that. And that is the kind of the way that this conversation proceeds. And it's not, if we look at it that way, it's not that surprising that we would wind up with the circumstances that we have of mass incarceration. Oh, there's also, I just wanted to say really quickly, there's some folk here who I know I really wanted to recognize, which is my colleague Kelly Jones over there, Professor Kelly Jones, who just got a MacArthur Award, so I have to like say my daughter is way back there in the corner too, and I want to make sure that, because I want to make sure she's here for these conversations, because I think that's the most important thing, that